In the humid evening air of Manila, as neon lights flickered across the streets and tricycles roared past, a 16-year-old boy named Jairo Santos stood backstage at AGT Manila 2025 with his hands trembling uncontrollably. He wasn't trembling because of fear alone. He was trembling because this moment wasn't supposed to belong to someone like him. Not a kid raised in a cramped apartment above a sari-sari store. Not a boy who'd learned to sing by copying the muffled radio that played old classics from his late grandfather's shelf. And definitely not someone who'd spent more time delivering chilled water bottles to construction sites than daydreaming about stepping into the spotlight of a major talent show. But tonight, everything felt different. Jairo clutched the small golden pendant around his neck, his grandfather's last gift before passing away. Inside it was a tiny photo. The man who had raised him taught him English by replaying old Elvis interviews and told him again and again that the voice inside him wasn't just a talent. It was a responsibility. Use it to lift people, his grandfather had said. Even when life is heavy, your voice can carry someone who can't carry themselves. The stage manager called his name. His chest tightened. This was it. When Jairo stepped through the curtains, the bright lights washed over him so intensely that for a second he forgot where he was. The crowd stretched endlessly, people waving light sticks, children on their parents' shoulders, fans cheering loudly even though they didn't know him yet. At the judges' table sat the icons of this year's show. Marisol Reyes, the strict but beloved Filipino Broadway star; Kenzo Mori, a Japanese music producer known for spotting vocal diamonds; and Eden Brooks, the American TV host whose reactions alone could go viral. "Hi there," Eden greeted with her easy smile. "You look young, but you look ready." "What's your name?" "Jairo," he whispered, barely audible. Eden leaned forward. "Take your time. We're all here for you." He nodded, but his eyes were fixed on the audience, ordinary people who had come not just to be entertained but to feel something. And suddenly, he remembered his grandfather's final night in the hospital. The man could hardly breathe, but he still asked Jairo to sing Can't Help Falling in Love, because it reminded him of the happiest days with Jairo's grandmother. Jairo sang with tears dripping down his shirt, and his grandfather squeezed his hand with the little strength he had left. One day he had whispered, "You'll sing for the world." Tonight, the world was here. The orchestra cue began soft, nostalgic, unmistakably Elvis, and the audience collectively leaned in. But when Jairo opened his mouth, something miraculous happened. His voice, rich and smoky, rolled across the arena with the uncanny warmth of the king of rock and roll himself. People gasped. A girl in the front row covered her mouth in disbelief. Eden's eyes widened, and Kenzo Mori dropped his pen. But it wasn't just imitation. Jairo's voice carried an honesty that only comes from someone who has lived more sorrow than his age should allow. Each note trembled with longing. Each breath sounded like a story waiting to be told. For the first verse, the arena stayed silent, stunned by the sound that didn't seem humanly possible from a teenage boy. But then the magic began to unfold. Halfway through the performance, as he slipped into a heartfelt vibrato, an elderly man somewhere in the crowd began to cry quietly. A few rows behind him, a mother who had recently lost her husband gripped the hand of her little girl, whispering that the song reminded her of the man they both missed. A group of construction workers, men who knew the grit and exhaustion of everyday survival, lifted their phones high, tears forming as they recognized the look of determination on Jairo's young face. Everyone in the room felt something personal, something deeply human, and Jairo felt it too. As he sang, he saw faces changing, softening, remembering, healing. He had walked onto the stage hoping to prove himself. Instead, he was doing something far greater. He was lifting people the way his grandfather once lifted him. Then came the unexpected moment that no one saw coming. Just as he reached the emotional peak of the song, the pendant around his neck snapped. It fell to the floor with a sharp, metallic ping that echoed in his microphone. Jairo froze mid-lyric. Panic surged through him. The music kept playing, but he couldn't move. His grandfather's pendant, his anchor, his courage was lying on the ground. The audience held its breath. Marisol Reyes stood abruptly. "Pick it up," she said gently. Her voice carried through the entire arena, steady and reassuring. "Your story doesn't stop because of a broken chain." Jairo inhaled shakily. He knelt, picked up the pendant, and held it tightly in his hand. When he stood back up, the orchestra looped the final chorus. This time he didn't sing like a boy imitating a legend. He sang like someone who understood what it meant to break and keep going anyway. His voice cracked beautifully, vulnerably, and the entire arena felt the shift. This wasn't a performance anymore. It was a confession. By the time he finished the last note, the audience was already on its feet. The applause rose like a wave. People were crying openly. Even the security guards standing against the walls were sniffing, trying not to show it. Eden Brooks wiped a tear from her cheek. "Jairo," she whispered, That didn't sound like someone trying to be Elvis. That sounded like someone who has lived every line of that song. Kenzo leaned into his mic. Your voice is powerful, but your heart, is what stunned us. Marisol Reyes looked at him with eyes full of a mother's pride. And your grandfather, he heard that. Trust me, the crowd erupted again, louder than before. But what happened next became the moment replayed millions of times across social media. A woman in the front row, perhaps in her 70s, stood up, clutching a framed photo of her late husband. With trembling hands, she lifted it toward the stage. Thank you, she said through tears. Your voice brought him back to me for 3 minutes. Jairo's throat tightened. He stepped off the stage, walked directly to her, and without thinking hugged her tightly. The arena fell silent again, but this time it was a silence filled with awe. A single act of compassion, simple and human, had turned a performance into a shared moment of healing. What no one knew until later was that the woman had been attending AGT Manila, alone, hoping for anything to ease the grief she carried. Jairo's song did more than that. It gave her a moment of connection she never expected to feel again. When he returned to the stage, all 3 judges hit the golden buzzer at once, a rule they'd never broken before. Gold confetti exploded overhead, swirling around him like a blessing, and as Jairo held the pendant close, he felt something settle inside him, not confidence, not pride, purpose. He finally understood what his grandfather meant. The stage wasn't a dream. It was a way to reach people who needed hope. Long after the show ended, viewers across the world, especially in the U.S., where Elvis's legacy still lives fiercely, shared the clip with captions like "This kid saved my night," and "This is why humanity still deserves music." And somewhere in the whirlwind of fame, interviews, and praise, Jairo realized something. His voice wasn't just his anymore. It belonged to every person who needed comfort, every heart missing someone, every soul searching for a little light in a dark place. He had stepped on stage as a trembling boy. He walked off as someone transformed, not because he hit every note, but because he chose to give a part of himself away. And in return, the world gave him something priceless, proof that kindness, even in the smallest gesture, still has the power to change lives.